Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be ranking every single one of Deadlock's more than 150 items on a tier list to see which items are the best and which items are the worst. Now, we've got a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to keep this intro brief, but I do still need to do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, this tier list is just my opinion, and you are absolutely entitled to disagree. And as a matter of fact, I'd love to hear your feedback down in the comments section. Just make sure to keep things respectful. There's always one or two people who take these tier lists way too seriously, and they just make a fool out of themselves in the comments. Don't be that guy. Next, let's talk about the actual format of the tier list. Now, the truth is there is no one best or worst item in Deadlock because Deadlock takes place in stages, and some items are better at certain stages than others. And also, since there are more than 150 items in Deadlock, it's not really feasible to put them all on one tier list. So instead, I am making 4 tier lists in this video. One tier list for each tier of item. Now, the format of each tier list is going to be pretty traditional. We have S, A, B, C, and D tiers. S tier is for the best items, A tier is for really strong items, B tier is for balanced items, C tier is for items that are still pretty strong but they are more niche and limited to certain characters, builds, or situations, and then D tier is for items that are just flat out pretty bad. I'm also going to be ordering the items within each tier, but I have a special way of doing this, so make sure you pay attention to this part. First of all, I'm going to be clumping them up into weapon, vitality, and spirit items. So just because you see a weapon item ahead of a vitality item, that doesn't necessarily mean that the weapon item is better than the vitality item. I think it's just really hard to compare them that way, and so I'm just making the categories completely separate. But within each individual category, I am ordering the items based on their strength. So if you see one vitality item ahead of another vitality item, that means that the first vitality item is better than the second vitality item. Got it? Good. So now that we got that out of the way, real quick, if you guys have been enjoying my videos and you enjoy this style of content, then make sure that you're subscribed down below so you don't miss out on any future videos from me. And with that being said, let's get started. So let's get started with the tier 1 items. These items are most commonly purchased at the start of the game, so I'll be ranking them based on their early game impact. First up, we have the lonely item in D tier, Sprint Boots. This item unfortunately doesn't provide any value whatsoever when you're in combat with an enemy, since sprint speed and out of combat healing are both disabled when you're in a fight. It exclusively serves as a stepping stone for enduring speed and doesn't do much else. Next, we have a couple of items in C tier. Now, this might be a hot take, but I don't think Rusted Barrel is the D tier item that it once was. It's actually seen some success against gun-heavy laners like Haze and Infernus because it provides a nice window to deal a ton of damage to them without taking much back. It's still a very niche item, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Mystic Expansion can be good on some heroes, but range usually isn't your biggest priority when picking power spikes that'll win you your lane. It's not bad, but it doesn't have as much impact as other items on most characters. Mystic Regeneration is actually a really good sustain item on lane, but only for heroes that can consistently apply spirit damage to the enemies like Mirage with his Jin's Mark. Most heroes can't use this effectively, which makes it a C tier item. Rebuttal is a fantastic item if you're in a burger boxing lane. Otherwise, nobody picks this up. High Velocity Rounds is an extremely niche item that only benefits heroes with slow projectiles, and it's usually reserved as a stepping stone for Express Shot or armor-piercing rounds if you're feeling fancy. It's good on Viscous, but not many other heroes. Now for the B tier, we have some pretty boring items. Extra Spirit is a solid item for characters with good spirit scaling, and there's not much more to say about it. Now, Spirit Strike is actually a pretty good item, and you could maybe make the case for bumping it up to A tier. It provides a good amount of extra damage on your melee attacks. However, the reason I've kept it down in B tier is because it is much riskier to use than other forms of early game burst because it forces you into melee range where you're more likely to take damage and get parried. Don't get it twisted though, this is a powerful item when used effectively. Extra Regen is just about the most boring item in the entire game. It gives a balanced amount of healing on lane, and that's basically it. Melee Lifesteal is in a similar boat to Spirit Strike. It provides a huge amount of healing on lane, but puts you at more risk than safer options. So it also goes in B tier. Extended Magazine and Rapid Rounds are both necessary items for most gun builds, but their on-lane impact isn't the strongest. They're balanced items that provide a nice boost to your gun damage before you get your big power spikes online. Finally, Close Quarters is an item with some pretty good stats on lane for up-close and personal heroes. It's strong on a good number of heroes, but it's nowhere close to overwhelming, so it's the perfect item to round off the B tier. Now, let's talk about the spicy items in A tier. Extra Charge is a phenomenal item on a lot of characters because it gives an extra charge of your charge charged abilities. Whether it's Ivy's Kudzu, Victor's Jumpstart, or Lash's Grapple, most heroes get something good out of extra charge. However, it's not actually a universally good item, which limits it from an S tier ranking. Mystic Burst is another item that adds a ton of flat damage in the early game. It's a must-buy on a lot of heroes like Viscus, Pocket, Lash, etc. It's much safer to use than Spirit Strike, which makes it a more valuable item on lane in my opinion, so it goes at the top of A tier. Extra Stamina gives you way more functional mobility than its counterpart in Sprint Boots, and you can use it to dodge a lot of attacks at all stages of the game. It's essential on heroes with 2 stamina bars like Bebop and McGinnis, and it upgrades into 3 phenomenal upgrades that benefit almost every build in the game. It's a great item in many regards, but it's not going to win you the lane. Extra health gives you a big boost to your EHP in the early game and is a strong stepping stone for fortitude later. It's great into tough lanes where you're taking a lot of damage. Healing Right is a nearly universal item for tough lanes where you need a lot of healing. It provides more healing than any other tier 1 item at the cost of forcing you to play passive or risk losing out on most of the healing. It's great at helping you to springboard back from a tough lane, but it doesn't necessarily help you if you're already winning. Because it's so universally useful though, it has to go into the A tier. Headshot Booster is a phenomenal gun item on lane for many heroes because it adds a very nice helping of extra burst on your gun. It's similar to Mystic Burst in that regard, so it gets a similar rating to its purple counterpart. Finally, let's look at the S tier. Restorative Shot is arguably the best healing item on lane if you're able to use it consistently because it provides a huge chunk of healing whenever you poke an enemy hero, and it has a fairly low cooldown. Most weapons are able to reliably proc this item, especially against big heroes like Abrams and Dynamo. It also adds a significant amount of weapon damage, allowing you to play more aggressively than other healing items. This makes it an S tier item in my opinion. And finally, the best tier 1 item goes to Monster Rounds. This item gives a huge amount of extra damage and damage reduction against all NPCs, making it easier to shove the wave, clear camps, and push the Guardian while taking less damage from all of those sources. It also upgrades into one of the best tier 3 items in the game, Cultist Sacrifice. This item is good on just about everybody, which makes it a clear S tier item. Now, let's move on to the tier 2 items. Up first, we have another lonely item in D tier, Slowing Bullets. This item is just really bad. It doesn't add any extra damage to your gun, it has to build up before the slow is applied, and it doesn't even upgrade into anything later on down the line. If any gun item needs a buff, it's this one. Now, we have a lot more items in the C tier, so I'll try to speed things up now. Mystic Slow and Suppressor are both good items if you're able to apply spirit damage consistently, similar to Mystic Regeneration. In particular, these items are good on heroes like Seven and Ivy, but they don't see much use on a larger scale. Duration Extender is also a pretty good item on some heroes who benefit from longer lasting abilities. However, Duration will almost always be second fiddle to cooldown reduction, which makes it a C tier item. Restorative Locket is one of the least used items in the game because it's really weird. It gives a decent amount of healing and stamina back, but you need to charge it up by having enemies use abilities near you. The mix of inconsistent build up and getting better stats from other sources makes this an extremely niche item that's only used in a select few builds. It's not bad, just strange. Healing Booster is a good item on supports like McGinnis and Dynamo, but most other heroes skip it entirely. It's the definition of a niche item. Weapon Shielding has always lived under the shadow of Spirit Shielding. It's nearly identical, but due to the nature of Spirit and gun damage in this game, Spirit Shielding just ends up being way more consistent. Return Fire can be very good on tanky heroes who expect to take a lot of damage from gun heroes like Haze. It's best paired with other beefy sustain items. A solid item for sure, but most heroes don't run it. Split Shot is a pretty terrible gun item on most heroes, but there are some playstyles like Gunpage and Viper that make good use of it. This saves it from the D tier. Long Range is only useful on heroes like Vindicta and Mirage, and even then, if an enemy forces themselves in close quarters, it's useless. Extremely niche, but good if you keep your distance. Spirit Shredder Bullets caters to a very specific type of hero who does consistent spirit damage over time while shooting their gun. It's good on heroes like Infernus and Seven, but most other heroes eschew this for other sources of shred. Weakening Headshot serves as a stepping stone for Crippling Headshot, and as a standalone item, it's just pound for pound worse than Bullet Resist Shredder right now. This is in part because, unlike BRS, it doesn't work against NPCs. Speaking of Bullet Resist Shredder, let's move on to the B tier. Skipping around a bit, Bullet Resist Shredder is a pretty solid item because most gun heroes have some means of proccing it and it has a long duration. It also has better base stats than Weakening Headshot, making it the far superior tier 2 shred item. Spirit Sap is slept on a bit, and while it's mostly used as a stepping stone for Silence Wave, it can still be good at amping your big spirit attacks before they hit. Mystic Vulnerability is also a pretty solid Spirit Shred item for DOT builds, especially because it upgrades into escalating exposure later. And of course, Improved Spirit is probably the most balanced item in the entire game. It's good, it's consistent, it's cheap, no complaints. Debuff Reducer is usually purchased as a stepping stone for Debuff Remover or Unstoppable, and his base stats are alright. It's nothing flashy, but it's very helpful against many debuffs in the game. Similarly, Bullet and Spirit Lifesteal provide good amounts of healing to their respective damage archetypes. The more damage you deal, the better they are. Very balanced. Enduring Speed is also a pretty solid item for the cost. It upgrades sprint boots to general movement speed, making it much more useful in combat. It's certainly not winning awards for the best item, but it gets the job done. Opening Rounds is a pretty solid item that can help set enemies up to be executed by things like Shiv, Vindicta, and Grey Talon's ults. Not the best, but not the worst. Similarly, Intensifying Magazine is a pretty good choice on gun heroes with big magazines like McGinnis, Wraith, and Viper. But to get those big magazines, you'll want Titanic Magazine, which is a great item for maintaining your tempo in a fight as a gun hero. It's not good on every gun hero though, as some heroes prefer sources of flat ammo instead. Now for the A tier, we kick things off with Arcane Surge, a fantastic item to use before an impactful ability like McGinnis' Healing Spectre or Warden's ult. It has broad use cases and provides a lot of stats for the price. Slowing Hex is a phenomenal tier 2 item, especially against heroes like Calico and Mina thanks to its silencing movement abilities. It often forces the enemies to buy debuff remover, which means that a 1600 soul item elicits a 3200 soul response. Quicksilver Reload is amazing because it reloads your gun while dealing a bunch of extra damage on an ability of your choosing. It's essential on heroes like Lash and Mo and Krill for their early damage scaling, and it's great on heroes like Haze 2 for the reload. Guardian Ward is an amazing support item because it allows you to give yourself or an ally a sizable barrier and a huge movement speed boost. Even though it's an item limited to support builds, it's able to impact anybody on the team and its stats are incredible, so I'm still giving it an A tier ranking. Battle Vest is a pretty solid defensive item for gun builds. It gives a big amount of bullet resist and decent stats too. Melee Charge is the quintessential melee item. It makes heavy melees pack a huge punch, which guarantees it an A rating. Swift Striker is a cheap and impactful power spike for any gun build that wants to scale fire rate, especially in tandem with an item like Quicksilver Reload or our next item, Active Reload. This item is similar to QSR, but it provides much better stats for gun builds. It grants a huge amount of extra fire rate and bullet lifesteal after activating it, and it even provides a boost to your maximum ammo. This item is applicable on just about every gun build. However, something that's a lifesaver for heroes with single-digit ammo pools is Kinetic Dash. This gives you extra stamina and a ridiculously powerful fire rate boost after dash jumping, and it also grants a flat 8 ammo. This scales extremely well on heroes like Mina, Abrams, and Mirage, and it just has really good stats for the price. Finally, there's Fleetfoot. This item gives a much more powerful effect than Enduring Speed, but for a limited duration, and it also removes the movement speed penalty when firing your gun. This item has a really low cooldown, so you can spam it and zoom around the battlefield. It's also one of the only abilities in the game that lets you heavy melee cancel, which can be useful for baiting parries. It even boosts your ammo economy by making it much easier to slide. It's honestly a borderline S tier item that's great on most heroes. Now let's take a look at the actual S tier items. Cold Front is an amazing item that adds a nice amount of flat damage in the early game while boasting one of the most powerful slows in the entire game. This makes it great as a combo tool with abilities like Lash's Slam, and it's also amazing for setting up abilities like Infernus' Flame Dash. It has a wide range of applications and is used in so many builds, which makes it our first S tier item. Compressed Cooldown is also an S tier item because it's hard to find a hero that doesn't benefit from cooldown reduction. It's one of the most popular items in the game for a reason, and it's an instant S tier. Healbane is the best anti-heal item in the game because of how consistently it can be applied compared to every other option. It's the cheapest anti-heal in the game and provides a chunky heal after killing an enemy. This should be your first choice when looking for an anti-heal item to buy. Reactive Barrier has saved my life countless times because it provides a huge barrier when you get crowd controlled. It's a mandatory purchase against heroes like Bebop and Abrams, and it scales better than every other tier 2 barrier into the late game if you're playing a Spirit build. It's another easy S tier item. Similarly, Spirit Shielding provides a powerful, albeit smaller, barrier for a wider range of applications than Reactive Barrier. It gives a huge amount of EHP in the early game, which gives it an S tier ranking. But of course, we can't forget Enchanter's Emblem. This is similar to Battle Vest but for spirit damage, and even though it provides less damage reduction, it makes up for it with much more powerful bonuses. In particular, the cooldown reduction is what pushes this item over the edge into the S tier. Finally, let's take a look at our gun items. Mystic Shot is a stupidly broken item right right now on heroes like Viscous and Paradox because of how much extra flat burst it provides even from a distance, as it has no fall off. It also scales really well with Spirit Power, making it useful all the way up through the mid-game. Backstabber is also a fantastic item on many heroes because it does so many things. It makes you stealthier by lowering your footstep volume, and it provides a chunky damage over time for the early game while lowering enemy resistances and making them visible through walls. It simply does a ton of amazing things for the price, which puts it up in S tier. Now, let's take a look at the tier 3 items, and you might be noticing a pattern with the D tier on this tier list, as there is once again only one bad tier 3 item. I hate to break it to you, but Trophy Collector just isn't good. It's satisfying and it's fun to play with for sure, but it's not actually effective at the higher ranks of gameplay. It doesn't give you any bonuses right away, and you're never guaranteed to max it out. The shorter the game is, the less time you have to max it out and make use out of its benefits. And sprint speed just isn't even really that good. It's simply much better to spend your 3200 souls on an item that provides you a substantial power spike right away, rather than waiting for the slow and inconsistent buildup of Trophy Collector. Now, let's take a look at the crowded and populous C tier, which has a ton of niche items. Disarming Hex is good against certain gun builds, but its effectiveness wanes once they have debuff remover. Similarly, Decay is great against tanky heroes because of its percent-based damage, but it's also hard countered by debuff remover. And Knockdown is some great CC when it hits. It's a stupendous counter to flying heroes, until they buy debuff remover and cleanse it before the stun hits. Yeah, you could probably guess what tier debuff remover is going to be. Metal Skin is a great item at shutting down gun builds in a way that's harder to deal with than Disarming Hex. In particular, this item makes Haze's ult a joke. However, it slows you down and can be removed with Capacitor, so it's not perfect, and usually there are more flexible options. Fury Trance is great on gun heroes who aren't reliant on their abilities. It's limited in scope to heroes like Haze, but it's quite powerful when used right. It's the definition of a niche item. Healing Nova is a pretty solid item on supports, and the earlier it's purchased, the better. However, it doesn't scale well into the mid and end game, making it very niche. Majestic Leap is an insanely good item, but only on a few heroes. Lash and Pocket are the main ones, but it's also sometimes purchased on heroes like Warden and Viscous. Spirit Rend has the same limitations as Spirit Shredder bullets, except you need to consistently stack headshots to benefit from it. Because of this, the item is technically good, but sees very little playtime. Blood Tribute is an item that I would have put in D tier a month ago, but it's been buffed quite a bit and can be useful for some niche builds because of its ludicrously powerful fire rate and debuff resistance. If you're skilled at using it, it's a sleeper pick. Headhunter is a weird item because it provides a lot of flat damage, but comes online much later in the game when percent increases start to be more viable. It also comes with a percent based heal, which can be useful, but only on characters with high health pools. It's good in a couple of builds, but there are usually better sources of either damage or healing, so this item goes underused. Sharpshooter adds a huge amount of weapon damage, but it has the same limitations as long range, so it also goes in the C tier. And Express Shot adds a gigantic amount of burst to Viscous' alt fire. Otherwise, almost no one uses this item. Weighted shots provide some good stats to tanky gun builds. Unfortunately for weighted shots, most gun builds are not hybrid tanks and thus benefit from other items instead. Alchemical Fire is a borderline B tier item that does a lot of spirit damage while making the enemies weak to gun damage. It blankets a large area and is great if you have something like Vindictus Tether to lock them down. Similarly, Heroic Aura could maybe be bumped up to B tier because it gives really good stats. It's especially great on McGinnis since it also buffs her turrets. However, I think both of these items are still a little too limited in their use cases to be a true B tier item. So let's look at what the B tier items actually are. First up, we have Torment Pulse, a great way to get a ton of extra damage on anyone who fights up close. Yamato, Calico, Billy, etc. all love this item, but it's certainly not OP and not everyone wants it. It barely makes it into the B tier. Radiant Regeneration is much more accessible than Mystic Regen because it gives a huge heal when you use an ability and it has a fairly low cooldown. By this point, Spirit builds become much more consistent because they have more cooldown reduction from ability points and items, so Radiant Regen becomes a pretty solid healing item. Superior Duration also gets a glow up from its lower tier counterpart. This is because it extends the boost to all your abilities and your items, which can make it pretty effective on some builds. This saves it from being a C tier rating in my opinion. Greater Expansion provides the biggest boost out of the range, duration, and cooldown upgrades, and it also extends that boost to every ability. This is actually a really solid item for boosting the consistency of your abilities. Surge of Power is a great item that gives a huge boost to one ability while serving as a pseudo Fleetfoot. Many builds use this to get a chunky power spike on their most important ability. Both of the tier 3 armor items are the definition of B tier items. They're effective and they get the job done without going above and beyond. They're good for defense but come at the opportunity cost of spending those souls on more damage or utility. Life Strike also goes in B tier because it provides a solid amount of healing to melee builds but isn't anything super special. Now for the gun items, Hunter's Aura and Point Blank are both excellent damage upgrades for a vast array of up-close and personal builds in Deadlock. They're limited to only working up close, but it's generally easier to keep an enemy close to you than it is to keep them at a distance, which is why these are so much better than Sharpshooter on a lot of heroes. Hollow Point also provides some pretty insane gun stats with the caveat that you have to be above 65% health. If you position well and don't take too much damage, you can blast the enemies to high heaven. But that's easier said than done, so it's limited to B tier. Finally, Escalating Resilience is a good hybrid item for many gun builds because it gives extra ammo and gun scaling while also granting some good defensive stats. It's strong but not broken. Maybe it could be a C tier item, but I feel that is popular enough to warrant going in B tier. Now at the bottom of A tier we have Tank Buster. This might be a bit of a hot take, as Tank Buster is surprisingly controversial since some people think it's a bit of a bait item. However, I think that when used effectively, it's quite good. It does a huge amount of damage to tanky heroes, and the later into the game you buy it, the better it is. It's also the only source of spirit damage that ignores resistances, which gives it even more late game viability. If you time the purchase of this item right, it's very useful on a whole host of heroes, so I'm still going to give it an A rating. Silence Wave is a really good item right now because it lowers enemy resistances and silences them out of their abilities. Now sure, this can be removed just like the items I put in C tier, but it has a much more immediate and potent impact than the other items. You can often get off whatever important ability you wanted to hit before they react in time to remove it, and if they don't have debuff remover, then they're absolutely screwed when you put this item on them in a way that's hard to replicate with the other active items in the category. So this is absolutely an A tier item. Rapid Recharge is also an A tier item for the exact same reasons as Extra Charge. It's just really good on heroes with charged abilities. Enough said. Spirit Snatch is an item that would have been S tier a month ago, but it got nerfed pretty hard recently. It's still an insane item on a whole host of melee builds though, so it doesn't go anywhere below A tier. Fortitude is a pretty solid defensive item because it gives a ton of health and helps you to stay active on the map rather than going back to base to heal. It also helps you rotate quicker because of the extra movement speed. Rescue Beam is an insane support item because it lets you pull an ally out of danger. This works even through the thickest of hard CC like Dynamo's ultimate, and is responsible for saving so many players from the brink of death. And its healing scales so much better into the late game than Healing Nova does. This is the far superior upgrade to Healing Right for sure. And then there's Veil Walker. This is another item that would have been S tier had I made this list last month, but it got a ton of nerfs that make it much less ubiquitous in the meta. It's still an excellent item, but the nerf to the healing in particular makes it much weaker than it was previously. Now, let's rapid fire these gun items. Toxic Bullets is a fantastic item for gun builds that's much better than Decay because it can be reapplied very quickly after being cleansed. Tesla Bullets is also a super good item on any gun hero with a fast fire rate because it adds a ton of flat damage and helps you farm faster. Berserker is really good on tanky heroes who like going in and absorbing damage. It provides the biggest weapon damage increase for the price if you can sustain it. And finally, Burst Fire is one of the best fire rate items in the game. It matches Blood Tribute's fire rate without all the downsides. Easy A tier gun item. Now, let's take a look at the S tier items for this category. Superior cooldown should be no surprise as it's one of the best items in the entire game, category aside. 25% cooldown reduction on every ability is insane, and I don't think I need to explain why. So let's talk about Stamina Mastery up next. This is the most biased placement on the entire list because I think this item is ridiculously fun. It really lets you max out the movement system, and it's essential on heroes like Lash and Pocket. It's great on most heroes if you really want some extra movement. Realistically, it should probably be an A tier, but I moved it to the bottom of the S tier because it's my tier list and I really like this item. So if you don't like it, make your own list. Anyways, back to the serious rankings. Warp Stone is so good because it lets you quickly dodge or chase enemies with a short range teleport while also gaining a ton of bullet damage reduction. If you're good at using it, it's one of the most valuable items in the game. Debuff Remover removes crowd control and debuffs from your character. Nothing else needs to be said, it's an easy S tier. However, there's one more green item up here, and that's Counterspell. This is a lot harder to use than Debuff Remover, but it is ridiculously powerful. It lets you completely negate the damage and other effects of any ability in the game as long as you time your parry for it, including ultimates like Lash's Death Slam and Pocket's Affliction. And as if that wasn't enough, it also heals you and gives you a ton of spirit power for a successful parry. If that part got removed entirely, it would still be a fantastic item. Easy S tier alongside debuff removal. Finally, there's just one gun item up here, and that's Cultist Sacrifice. This has been nerfed a good amount, but it's still a phenomenal item. The bonuses against minions are superb, and the stats you get from munching on a minion are impactful for just about every hero. While the fire rate and health are slightly weaker in the early game, the range is good at all stages of the match, and the souls you get from eating a tier 3 minion immediately help you get your next power spike online. Trophy Collector can only dream of being as good as Cultist Sacrifice, so Cultist Sacrifice rounds out the S tier. Alright, now it's time for the final tier list of today, the tier 4 items. These items are meant to be huge, build-defining power spikes and ultra-powerful counterplay options, so let's see how they stack up. First up, we have the final D tier item of the video. Cheat Death is such a trash item, it's not even funny. You get to sink 6,400 souls down the drain to get an item that doesn't help you kill the enemies better and doesn't help you stay alive. It only gives you a brief window after death to back away to safety, after which the enemies can usually just kill you anyways. It doesn't even give you a good opportunity to finish off the person who killed you thanks to its steep damage penalty. There are almost no situations that justify buying this item, but it should probably stay that way because I don't want to imagine a world in which this item is meta. It just doesn't strike me as the type of item that should be in this game, and it earns a dishonorable D tier ranking. Anyways, let's move on to the less scandalous items now. The C tier is filled with a ton of powerful but niche items, so let's get started. Magic Carpet is one of the best movement abilities in the game. After a short windup, you can fly across the entire map and escape or engage in just about any situation from anywhere. The only downside is that it doesn't come with many other useful stats, and the windup makes it less reactive than something like Warpstone, so it goes at the bottom of C tier. Vortex Web is a great item for grouping up enemies into a powerful ability like Paige's Captivating Read. However, in some cases, it can actually be a bit harder to target on a nimble enemy than Slowing Hex, making it a super niche upgrade. Refresher is good on Dynamo and a couple of other heroes to give them 2 ults in one team fight. It can save the game in the right situation, but only a few heroes can use it effectively. Similar to Refresher, Echo Shard is good for using 2 of the same ability back to back, but only a few heroes like using this item, so it joins Refresher in the C tier. Witchmail is a tough item to build around because you're never guaranteed to be hit with bursts of spirit damage as often as needed to make it viable, you're not guaranteed to lower the cooldown you want unless you only use one ability over and over again, and you might die trying to get cooldown reduction in the first place. Thankfully, it gives some good defensive stats, otherwise I'd be tempted to put it in D tier. Inhibitor is a weird item because it has very powerful stats, but hardly anyone uses it because it's a 6k defensive item designed for gun heroes, and most people would rather stack up damage instead. Maybe if it upgraded from Heal Bane and Slowing Bullets, it'd be an easier pickup. Until then, it stays in C tier. Juggernaut provides a ton of useful stats, but all too late in the game. By the time you pick up this item, you usually don't need the 8 health regen or the 25% melee resist. The fire rate slow is nice, but it doesn't even upgrade the movement speed that you get from its predecessor, Enduring Speed. There are just better defensive items to go for most of the time. Diviner's Kevlar can be very good on some ult-based builds that also want to stack duration, like Moe and Krill or Pocket. However, it can still be hard to justify compared to other power spikes that offer more value, sometimes for cheaper too. Healing Tempo is a genuinely broken item, but only a couple of heroes can buy it. This item is single-handedly responsible for making McGinnis as good as she is, and it's pretty good on other supports too. However, most other heroes shouldn't buy this item. Shadow Weave is the awkward cousin of Veilwalker. It's focused more on offensive stats and a longer stealth period, but its price is a pretty big pain point. It's hard to justify buying this item most of the time, but you can still build around it and have it be viable if you try hard enough. Spellslinger has some pretty good stats if you're able to spam abilities like crazy to maintain its bonuses. This limits it to heroes like Wraith and Geist, who usually have other power spikes they want to rush first. Now, I'm willing to admit that Spiritual Overflow might be completely slept on right now. Ever since they changed it from providing bonus duration to bonus cooldown reduction, it's been an intriguing item with a lot of potential. However, I haven't seen it used practically enough to justify it going anywhere above C tier. It's definitely worth experimenting with though. Armor-piercing rounds gets better and better the more damage reduction that the enemies have. If the enemies only have light armor, you're much better off going for other sources of bullet resist shred. But against heroes like Viscus and Yamato with their ults, this item is straight up evil. Ricochet is the premier farming item for gun builds. builds. The problem is, it's a very expensive save up and doesn't help you with single target damage at all. It really messes with your tempo, and considering how short Deadlock matches are lasting these days at the highest levels of play, it can be a very hard item to justify. However, it can still be very good on some setups for spreading debuffs to the entire team and scooping up all the farm on the map. Frenzy is an interesting gun item because it's another one geared towards tanky heroes. It gives some great bonuses when you're at low HP, but not many heroes want to play around the restrictions of this item. And at the top of C tier we have Capacitor. Now, this item has some insane potential because of the endless list of buffs that it can remove, and it's a great counterplay item against heroes like Viscus and Seven. However, it's hard to justify going out of your way to buy this unless you're already someone who buys Tesla bullets, which restricts the use cases for this item. It's an excellent item in the right situation, but it shouldn't be picked up all the time. Anyways, let's check out the B tier now. Scourge is at the bottom of B tier because it's a solid pickup for close quarters heroes looking for some extra damage and survivability. It's a nice pairing with heroes like Calico, especially against tanky heroes. Focus Lens is a lot stronger than it used to be now that the damage is still applied even if it gets removed by debuff remover. However, it can still be cleansed just like so many other crowd control items, meaning that I can't justify putting it any higher than B tier. Lightning Scroll is pretty good on a whole host of characters with big AoE ults without being too oppressive. There's not much to say about it, it's just viable. Armor Plating is an excellent item against gun heroes who apply a lot of status effects like Infernus's Afterburn or Haze's Fixation. It's expensive, but it provides great protection if you can afford it. Colossus is also a generally fantastic survival tool for any big beefy tanks looking to go in and wreak havoc. Leech is the least flashy of the three lifesteal upgrades because it provides a solid amount of both bullet and spirit lifesteal. It's solid on hybrid builds, but it doesn't have the carry factor that Infuser and Vampiric Burst do, so it remains in B tier. Crushing Fist is the pinnacle upgrade for melee builds looking to dominate their enemies. Or at least that's how it's supposed to feel. In reality, the damage bonuses are moderate at best, and the stun takes a long time to build up considering the risk of hitting an enemy with 3 heavy melees or 6 light melees. It's a good upgrade, but nothing to write home about. Silencer is like Inhibitor, but better since it provides most of the survival benefits while also boasting a chunky silence. It's especially great because most people don't see the silence coming, and the surprise factor can earn you a cheeky kill. It doesn't come with any damage buffs though, which can sometimes make it hard to justify. However, Glass Cannon is all about big damage buffs. This provides the single biggest weapon damage increase in the game and also grants you a big fire rate buff if you can stack it. The problem is, it lowers your max health, loses a stack if you die, and doesn't give you a stack for assists, making it very hard to reach the full potential of this item. Lucky Shot is like the safer version of Glass Cannon since it does less damage but doesn't come with the same drawbacks. It's best used on heroes with fast fire rates, so you also won't see this on slower firing heroes like Holiday. Now let's take a look at some real powerhouses in the A tier. Arctic Blast is the upgrade to Cold Front that roots enemies in place for a second, which is super helpful for setting up huge combo plays. The reason why it's not an S tier like Cold Front is because the damage is only marginally better than Cold Front, and it's a lot more expensive, but it's still a fantastic item. Mercurial Magnum adds a heaping scoop of spirit damage on your gun if you have the spirit scaling to level this item up, which can be good on hybrid builds. It's very powerful in the right hands. Mystic Reverb is a huge damage multiplier for spirit burst builds because it adds 50% of your damage in a delayed explosion that also slows the enemies. This item makes any character regret not getting enough spirit resist. Spirit Burn used to be an S tier item, but it's been nerfed pretty hard. It can't delete objectives like it used to because it now goes on a cooldown if it procs on an NPC, and like so many other effects in the game, it can be cleansed by debuff remover. It also has a fairly long cooldown of 20 seconds, making it a less reliable form of anti-heal than Healbane or Toxic Bullets. Still, it's the most potent anti-heal in the game and adds a ton of damage to any spirit build, so it's still an A tier choice. Escalating Exposure is a must-buy for any damage over time build. It adds so much damage to heroes like Infernus, Seven, and Victor, and it also gives a huge amount of spirit damage reduction for some reason. It's an easy A tier choice. Curse is a ridiculously powerful anti-carry item. Whoever you use this on is almost completely disabled for the next 3 seconds, giving you and your team the perfect opportunity to annihilate them. This effect can't be cleansed by debuff remover, making it the most consistent silence in the entire game. The only drawback is the long cooldown and the opportunity cost of not picking another item with more damage output. Spellbreaker is a ridiculously powerful survival tool against any spirit build. It shuts down burst builds with its stupendous 75% damage reduction against burst attacks, and it also comes with a ton of debuff resist to help help DOT effects wear off quicker. It's expensive like plated armor, but if you can afford it, there's nothing better. Siphon Bullets is an incredible option for most gun builds in the game because it deals a ton of damage and grants a lot of survivability at the same time. Stealing enemy HP is very powerful, and the effect adds up quickly. However, if you want more raw healing, Infuser and Vampiric Burst are incredible options for their respective archetypes. In particular, Vampiric Burst is a super strong item because it grants 80% bullet lifesteal and overfills your magazine, letting you unleash destruction on whichever unfortunate soul is down your sights. Finally, Crippling Headshot is a pretty great gun item for lowering enemy resistances and reducing their healing. It can be reapplied very easily and lasts a long time, and it's particularly good on hybrid builds because it reduces both resistance types. It's a solid gun item that deserves an A rating. Alright, we're almost done now. Let's get through the final few items here in the S tier. First up, Ethereal Shift. This item got nerfed super hard recently, and yet I still think it deserves to be at the bottom of S tier. It provides 4 seconds of total immunity from all effects, and it gives some powerful buffs once you leave. It's still an essential component of many builds for characters like Victor and Pocket, and it can save you from so many of the nastiest abilities in the game. Maybe I'm wrong, but I still think it's a super valuable tool that many heroes can use. Transcendent Cooldown is an incredible item just like the previous 2 upgrades. While the total cooldown reduction is marginally better than Superior Cooldown, the big effect this item has is extending the cooldown reduction to the rest of your items. This includes active items like Cultist Sacrifice and Ethereal Shift, but also items with internal cooldowns like Spirit Burn, Mystic Reverb, and even Torment Pulse. This item has incredible synergy with so many different builds because of this effect, and earns it an S tier ranking on my list. The last spirit item here is Boundless Spirit. The previous 2 upgrades for this item are pretty balanced overall, but the reason I have Boundless in S tier is because it's a major power spike that's good for basically every spirit build in the game. And the more purple items you have, the stronger it gets because of its percent-based spirit scaling. It's a busted item that's the cornerstone of many spirit builds. Now onto the green items. Phantom Strike is a ridiculously powerful item for so many heroes that want to get up close and personal. It puts you directly on a target, deals damage, disarms them, and pulls them to the ground. It counters flying heroes without the long telegraphy of knockdown, it's a survival tool, and it's the most powerful initiating tool in the game. This item makes heroes like Abrams unstoppable, so it goes in the S tier for me. Divine Barrier is an item that a lot of people at lower ranks sleep on, but it's a busted item for support heroes to use. It grants a 600 health barrier, which is a super powerful heal that can't be countered by anti-heal. However, it also cleanses all debuffs on a target, including ultimate effects like Pocket's Affliction. If you're playing a support, you should pick up this item at some point because it is insanely good right now. Finally, we have Unstoppable, the ultimate CC denial tool. This lets you become immune to all CC and debuffs for 5.5 seconds, letting you commit to most pushes and ultimates with impunity. It helps you secure the Rejuvenator or a game-winning ultimate ability with almost no counterplay, and is essential for many ultimate-based playstyles. It's also a very fun item to use because it feels so good to deny all of that evil, wretched crowd control. So, Unstoppable rounds off this list as the final S tier item. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this video, so let me know what you think about my tier lists in the comments section down below, and if you enjoyed, of course, make sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe for more videos like this from me. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, I will see you all next time, peace out.